A Facebook friend's suggestion split my afternoon in two. I tapped it without thinking, and nothing felt ordinary after that. I was eating a cold turkey wrap at my desk in downtown Indianapolis, half watching the traffic creep around Monument Circle, when the blue banner slid across my phone. People you may know. That feed is supposed to be harmless. College roommates, clients I forgot to add, someone from a rec league who recognizes my last name. The top card showed a woman named June Harper. We had 4 mutuals. One of them was my dad. People treat friends' suggestions like weather, background noise until lightning hits your roof. Algorithms don't gossip, they map proximity. They surface the tiny bridges we pretend don't exist. Barbers, school fundraisers, overlapping church directories. In families, the father often stands for structure, the calendar keeper and boundary line. When structure wobbles, adults don't suddenly turn into children, but they do reach for rules. You might do it too, recheck facts, line up dates, turn feelings into spreadsheets. It's a way to hold the floor steady. Dad was the steadiness in ours. John Collins, 64, high school math teacher in Lawrence Township, the kind who still wore the same gray windbreaker to every Pacers game. My mother handled holidays. He handled everything with numbers, mortgages, tip calculations, the timing of leaving for the airport. My title at the agency was marketing manager, but in our house Dad had been the original brand. Reliable, dry jokes, warnings about APR. We weren't perfect, just practiced. 36 years for them, 33 for me, a string we could count. June's cover photo looked like Eagle Creek Park in spring. Bridge, water, Indiana gray that makes everything look flat. She stood next to a man I couldn't fully see, just the shoulder and profile. The shoulder wore a windbreaker like Dad's, down to the frayed cuff. It felt stupid to think a jacket meant anything. Plenty of men in Indianapolis wore that windbreaker. Plenty of men had that posture, that slightly forward neck from years over a classroom desk. People say you see what you want to see. The harder truth is you see what threatens what you want. Most people, when they sense a breach, go procedural. They click mutuals, scan timelines, build a chain. They tell themselves it's curiosity, but it's triage. You do it to cage the panic. I did it. I opened the mutuals list. 2 were harmless. Neighbors from my parents' cul-de-sac. Folks who would friend a pothole if it waved. The 3rd was my dad's teacher friend, Coach Miller. The 4th was John Collins. His profile was locked down, except for a birthday post from June. A tidy, "Happy birthday, Jay," under a photo carousel. In the second image, my father's face turned toward the camera, smiling in a way I knew from every graduation and cookout of my life. I didn't message anyone. Not Mom, not my younger brother, not Dad. You might think the right move is full confrontation. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's a way to lose the only clean minute you'll get. I took a screenshot, then another. I checked the date on the birthday post, April 11th, 2 weeks ago. My thumb hovered over, add friend, on June's profile. I wasn't ready to announce myself to a stranger who shared my father's smile. I hit follow instead and watched the button flip like a light I wasn't sure I wanted on. My feed became a lab bench, and I got the kind of careful I reserve for budgets. June's profile wasn't wide open, but there were seams. A birthday collage from April 11th showed cupcakes, a Pacers hat, and a man's hand with a faded scar across the knuckle. A half moon I knew from Dad prying paint cans. The caption read, "Happy birthday, Jay. We love you." In the comments someone wrote, "The girls adore you." Plural. Families run on shorthand. One letter can carry a household. To strangers, Jay is a nickname. Inside a system, letters are badges. My father signed things J. Collins because it looks tidy. When the story of who keeps the roof on wobbles, adults reach for control. You check timestamps, crop photos with your thumb, zoom until the pixels break. You're not chasing drama. You're trying to make the floor feel level. I kept it small. No property records, no deep dive. Just a call. I tapped Dad's name. 2 rings, then voicemail. "This is John. Leave it." A text followed. "In meetings. Long day. Call you tonight?" Meetings tracked. Teachers sit through plenty. But April is testing season, and he usually complained about proctoring. He didn't. I replied, "All good. Just checking on Sunday dinner," and set the phone face down. I pushed through a client deck, approved a mediocre banner ad, and watched the clock. At 6:12, the phone buzzed again. Not Dad. June had posted from Half Liter, ribs, a table, a man's shoulders in that gray windbreaker. The caption said, "Celebrating big news. Proud of you, S." The teenager at the edge held a paper that looked like a learner's permit. Denial isn't stupidity, it's muscle memory. Your mind throws out alternatives like life preservers. Could be an uncle, could be coincidence, could be another Jay who loves the Pacers and laughs with his eyes the way my father does. I saved the photo and checked my calendar. Sunday dinner in Lawrence was on. I wouldn't cancel. I'd bring dessert and see what the house said without words. Sunday dinners are rituals that keep a family from drifting. You show up with something store-bought and pretend you made it. You find your chair, and the script runs itself. Rituals aren't lies. They're agreements. In most homes, the father is the metronome, the one who sets tempo with the car keys and the grill tongs. When a metronome stutters, the whole song tilts. If you've ever felt that tilt, you know the instinct. Watch quietly, count beats. Don't break the rhythm until you're sure it's broken. I brought a key lime pie and let myself in. The windbreaker hung on the hallway hook, the cuff a little more frayed than last fall. Dad was at the stove, stirring green beans, the scar across his knuckle pale as chalk. He looked exactly like my father, calm, practical, a little amused I'd shown up early. "Hey, kiddo," he said. Mom handed me a potholder and asked about parking downtown like it was a dangerous sport. Families run on the comfort of old questions. You might read meaning into ordinary lines, but ordinary is a stubborn cover. We ate roast chicken and talked about light things. I gave a sanitized version of a client who wanted 3 taglines for the price of 1. Dad muttered about proctoring and how someone always forgets extra pencils. My younger brother Evan dropped in late, smelling like gym chalk, and demonstrated how his buddy sprained an ankle without moving. Laughter worked. Normal held. If you're in my chair, you feel it work like anesthesia, numb enough to keep you still, not enough to forget where you are. I tried simple. "Weird thing," I said, rinsing plates. "Facebook suggested a June Harper. Do you know her?" Dad paused just long enough to sip water before answering. "June? Booster Club," he said. "One of those parents who keeps the trains running. Her husband's the barbecue guy." He smiled toward Mom. "The sauce you liked." It was true that my mother had raved about sauce at some fundraiser last year. Truth, in these moments, isn't a wall, it's a curtain. You can hide behind a curtain and still tell the truth about what color it is. Mom wiped the counter. "June handles chaperones," she added. "She saved his skin during testing week. Coordinated drivers. He's been mentoring a couple kids. Keeps him young." The word kids floated between us like a safe word. I stacked forks and looked at the family calendar pinned to the side of the fridge. Dad's neat block letters filled the boxes. In Tuesday's square, between department, meeting, and trash, there was a line. S. Drive practice, 5 o'clock, 86th Street lot. The same line showed up Thursday, then Saturday, then again the following week. The pattern was tidy, like everything he touched. It was also new. On Tuesday, I turned my lunch break into an errand that happened to end near the 86th Street practice lot. Adults call it multitasking. It's surveillance with receipts. You tell yourself you're just passing by. That's how people managed out without setting it on fire. In families, the father usually anchors logistics. Who's driving? When the lights go off, which left turn is safer? When an anchor starts showing up in 2 harbors, the mind inventories buoys, times, places, names. You do it too. It isn't drama, it's balance. At 4:57 I parked by the chain-link fence. Cone sat in a crooked L. Dad's gray windbreaker moved like punctuation at the front bumper of a silver Civic. He tapped the hood twice, a signal I knew from when he taught me to parallel park behind the Kroger years ago. A girl with a high ponytail inched forward, jaw set, eyes flicking from mirrors to his hands. June stood off to the side with a thermos, calling out, "S, breathe." Their choreography was practiced in the way routines are when everyone knows the stakes and nobody wants a new dent. People think secrets are made of words, but they're built from repetition. A second life doesn't start in a hotel. It starts on a calendar with a standing appointment. You can spot it by how ordinary it looks. Drive practice, 5 o'clock. Wasn't fireworks. It was Tuesday, and again Thursday. That's how parallel structures hold, quietly, until something points at them and says, look. I watched Dad lean into the window, give a thumbs up, then step back with the half smile he used when I finally took my foot off the brake. They wrapped at 5:35, swapped places, and headed toward Half Liter, same patio as the photo I'd saved. I followed at a distance close enough to read menus, far enough to pretend I hadn't. This is how grown children test reality. You stage a coincidence and take notes. A server set down 3 root beers. The girl pulled out a rectangle of paper and smoothed it like treasure. You'll pass the written no problem, Dad said, easy and certain. June reached for the paper, then nudged it back. Let her show you. The girl turned it around. Even from the sidewalk I could see the header, Learner's Permit Application. Her initial on the top corner looked like a careful S. Restaurants make families legible. Tables show hierarchy. Inside jokes, who touches whose shoulder. The waiter smiled at them. First time behind the wheel? He asked. June answered. Second. The girl flicked her eyes to Dad and laughed. Don't tell him about the curb. He laughed too. Instinct will offer you alternatives right up until a single word removes them. The girl leaned in, lower voice but clear enough through the patio rail. Can we practice again Thursday, Dad? He didn't correct her. He just said, we will, like it had always been the plan. My phone buzzed a second later. Dad's text. Running late. Department debrief. Won't make it home till 7. Parallel stories often share timestamps. That's how they avoid colliding. You can hate the efficiency and still admire it. I walked back to my car, set the phone face down, and sat with the new math. A father who taught me to drive now coaching a girl who called him Dad. A woman who posted birthday wishes with a single letter that carried a household. I turned the key and waited for the air to clear, the way you do when you're not ready to move but can't stay where you are. There's a point where speculation turns into project management. Adults pick lanes under stress. The lawyer, the detective, the therapist. I defaulted to the marketer with a timeline. Families run on patterns. Fathers, especially, build the scaffolding that lets everyone else move. When the scaffolding looks duplicated, you don't blow it up. You trace the beams. You would too. You tell yourself it's not snooping. It's confirming what your body already knows. I scrolled June's older posts and hit a pocket of years where she shared more. A 2016 Booster Club newsletter tagged her in a photo captioned, "Thank you to Jay Collins for underwriting the bus to regionals." Coach Miller had commented, "Jay, you do more for those girls than most men." Another post from 2019 showed a backyard grill with a paper banner. S+M, last day of school. 2 girls, same brown hair, different heights, flanked June. The edge of a gray windbreaker sneaked into the frame. "Couldn't have done this year without our village," she wrote. "Special thanks to Jay." The comments were ordinary. Heart emojis, casserole jokes, the kind of civic approval that keeps neighborhoods friendly and nosy in equal measure. People think secrets are big events. Mostly, they're quiet infrastructure. A link in June's bio led to a public PDF from the Booster site. Emergency Contacts and Volunteers 2020. My stomach tightened when I saw Harper S. Emergency Contact, John C. Mentor, followed by my dad's cell. Mentor is a clean word. It sits between parent and neighbor and asks no follow-up questions. It also gives cover for habits, practice drives, last-minute pickups, a seat at the end of a restaurant table that feels like belonging. If you've ever watched a definition hold 2 truths at once, you know the tug. Gratitude for the help, dread for what it means back home. I didn't tell Mom. Not yet. There's a difference between protecting someone and staging their pain. I texted Evan. Climb later? Then deleted it. My brother lives in binaries. Either everything's fine or the world's on fire. He would call it now or bury it forever. I needed a middle. I needed my father to say something in his own voice, not filtered through a caption or a PDF. I waited until the evening quiet, then typed, "Coffee Saturday? Just us?" He replied within a minute. "Sure. Calvin Fletcher's? 9? The night before, I lined up the facts like index cards, dates, screenshots, the Booster PDF, the permit application photo. You might think the plan is confrontation like a scene in a courtroom. It wasn't. My job was to keep the frame steady and ask plain questions. At 8:58, I pushed open the cafe door and found him already at a corner table, windbreaker folded on the chair beside him like a second-place setting. He looked up, relieved to see me, or relieved to see anyone who wasn't asking him to be in two places at once. Up close, Dad looked like himself. Calm eyes, careful posture, hands folded like he was waiting for a question on a test he'd already graded. Fathers often carry authority the way coaches carry clipboards. Not loud, just assumed. When that authority cracks, adults don't hunt for villains so much as frameworks. You will too. You draw a clean box and ask someone you love to step into it with the truth. "I saw your text Tuesday," I said, "and I saw you at half liter. Who are June and S to you?" No raised voice, just the kind of tone you use in a meeting when everyone knows the number on the slide is wrong. He rubbed the scar on his knuckle. "I should have told you sooner," he said. "June's a friend from the Booster Club. S and her sister are." He breathed out. "They're kids I've helped. It started as rides, testing days. Their dad left years back. I filled some gaps. People like my father choose verbs that feel safe. Help, mentor, cover." Those words build a bridge between what they do and what they can admit. It isn't manipulation. It's how fixers stay useful without confessing how much they've promised. "Why did she call you Dad?" I asked. He stared at the lid of his coffee cup like it had instructions. "Names get fuzzy when you're the steady one," he said. "It's not official." Then I showed the screenshots, the birthday post, the permit application, the calendar squares. Compartmentalizers hate timelines because timelines flatten excuses. He looked smaller after that. 15 years ago, he said, June and her husband were trying to have a baby. They asked me to be a donor. It was clinical. No secrecy with them. We agreed I'd be around as a family friend. Then he left. I kept showing up. It was supposed to be simple. He kept his voice low. Your mother knew I helped with rides. She didn't know the rest. I told myself I was protecting her from details. Truth is, I was protecting my system. Systems are how fathers survive being needed by two fronts. One household gives them legacy. The other feeds their competence. You can scold that pattern from a distance, but when you're in it, you feel the gravity. The quiet text that swaps a meeting for a patio, the calendar entry that smooths over a lie. If you've ever been the reliable one, you know how easy it is to rename boundaries as favors. Is S your biological daughter? I asked. He nodded once. Yes. No flourish. Just a fact placed on the table like a bill. The word didn't explode anything. It rearranged everything. Biology didn't rewrite my childhood, but it wrote in margins I didn't know existed. And if you were me, you'd do the immediate math, the years, the holidays that now had parallel versions, the birthdays split between two kitchens. What now? He asked. Fixers hate open questions because they can't schedule them. Now we stop pretending this is only logistics, I said. Mom deserves the whole picture. June does too. We sit down. He looked like a man taking attendance in a room he didn't plan to enter. Give me until Sunday, he said. I want to talk to your mother first. I agreed, not because waiting felt good, but because keeping the frame steady mattered. I watched him fold the windbreaker and slide it under his arm. Reliability can look like a jacket you never take off. Today it looked like something he could no longer hide behind. Sunday felt less like a meal and more like a ledger. In families, the father often carries structure and the mother carries continuity. When structure changes, continuity asks for receipts. I arrived to find the table set early and Dad in his chair, not the kitchen. That was new. He spoke first. He told her about June, about S, about the clinic 15 years ago. He didn't dramatize it. Fixers don't perform. They submit facts like forms and hope the tone keeps the room from tipping. Mom listened the way good nurses do, still, alert, taking the measure of pain. She wasn't hurt by the science. She was hurt by the omission. You might be too. Biology is specific, but consent is broader. She had known about rights, practices, the mentor, label. She hadn't known she'd been edited out of a decision that placed our family next to another one for over a decade. You didn't protect me, she said, wiping the counter even though it was clean. You sidelined me. Fathers call it shielding. Mothers call it being made small. Both can be true. Adults create order by naming roles. He showed us a folder from the clinic, forms, a donor agreement with his real name, a note about no legal parental rights expected. He'd signed before June's husband left. I thought clear lines would hold, he said. That's the classic math of helpers. If the paperwork is tidy, the feelings will stay inside the margins. But families don't run on forms. They run on time, language, and who shows up on a Thursday. When a teenager says, "Dad," to the person who shows up, the document becomes a quiet footnote. We move from facts to rules. This is what adults do when identity shakes. They install guardrails. Mom said, "We tell Evan this week, not as gossip but as inventory." She wanted a meeting with June, with me there, to set terms that weren't euphemisms. What holidays look like, what "mentor" means going forward, what S already knows, and what we won't yank away to make ourselves feel neat. No more calendar codes, she said, tapping the fridge. If you're going to be two kinds of father, then you're going to be one kind of honest. I stepped onto the porch and texted June. I kept it simple, who I was, that Dad had spoken to Mom, that we wanted a conversation, not a scene. She replied in minutes. We owe you that. Wednesday at 6? Eagle Creek, the bridge. Algorithms had made the introduction. Now the people would have to do the work. I saved the time in my phone without abbreviations. Names organized loyalty. So due dates. Eagle Creek at 6 looked like a neutral room, pretending to be nature. June waved from the bridge. No makeup, hair pulled back. The look of someone who had paid for extra time with steadiness and wanted a receipt. In blended families, someone always plays operations. She had that energy. Fathers supply structure. Women like June keep the engine idling when structure fails. You might judge the choreography from the outside. Up close, it reads like survival. Rides arranged, practice cones set, silence inserted where pride would only make a mess. We stood with the water moving under us and compared versions. She didn't spin it. She said the clinic was her idea when her marriage was already thin. They picked my father because he was consistent, local, and not the disappearing kind. The agreement had been clean until life wasn't. When her husband left, she kept the label, mentor, because it protected everyone from the word that makes doors slam. At 10, she said, S started calling him Dad on accident. We didn't correct it because the ride stayed steady when the name did. That's the emotional math you see in a lot of households. Behavior writes the dictionary. You can blame the language, but the routine is what raises a kid. I asked what S knew. June took her time. She knows about the clinic. She knows donor, and that it means no papers. She also knows what consistency feels like, and she assigns names accordingly. Did S know about me? She knows he has you. She doesn't know birthdays or recipes or your street. June said that was her way of saying they had edited for dignity, the same way Dad had edited at home. Adults in parallel systems curate the other side to keep their own from collapsing. You would too, if the choice was between tidy privacy and a teenager's shaky center. We moved to terms because that's how grown-ups turn heat into light. We agreed to drop the calendar codes. If Dad had a standing commitment with S, it would live on a shared note, my mother included. Holidays would be named 6 weeks out. No surprise chairs dropped into living rooms like test balloons. Emergency contacts would show Mom's number right next to his on school forms. Money came up without drama. He had floated fees for camps, tires, a field trip. Nothing large, nothing tracked. We decided anything going forward would go through June with receipts attached. Consent isn't only intimate, it's administrative. You learn that fast when trust has to be rebuilt with line items. Finally, the question of S meeting me. June wanted a slow entry. I did too. We sat Saturday morning at a park bench, 30 minutes, no titles, just introductions. She's proud of the permit, June said. Let her bring that. Pride is a stabilizer in teenagers. You don't yank it to prove a point. On the walk back to my car, I texted Mom a simple summary and added her to the shared note. The bridge receded in the rearview, and the day shifted from secret to schedule. That's not a moral, it's a workflow. When family identity cracks, you rebuild with dates, names, and promises you can keep at 5 o'clock on a Thursday. Evan would need the facts, not the drama. S would need a calm adult who wasn't auditioning for center stage. I drove home ready to do both. We told Evan on Thursday. Siblings often play the role of the reality check, less invested in nuance, more interested in where the line is. He listened, arms crossed, with the impatience of a man who wants the verdict before the evidence. Adults think binaries are childish. They're also efficient. So he's got another kid, Evan said. I laid out the clinic, the no legal rights agreement, the years of rides. He paced, then stopped. If mom's in the loop now, and nobody's sneaking around, fine. But no secret birthdays, and no surprise chairs at Thanksgiving. That was his condition, clarity. In families, the enforcer isn't always the father. Sometimes it's the sibling who hates chaos more than he hates being wrong. Saturday came fast. Parks are good neutral zones because nobody owns the benches. June and S arrived 5 minutes early. Teenagers in testing seasons carry pride like armor. S had her permit paperwork in a clear sleeve. We skipped titles and shook hands. I'm Sam, I said. Dad kept a step back, letting the shape be ours. S talked about the three-point turn like it was a boss level. You might expect genetics to announce themselves with dramatic music. Mostly they show up in micro habits. How someone taps a pen, the way a joke lands just off-center. She had Dad's way of half-listening while solving a problem in her head. It wasn't magic, it was pattern. We kept it practical. She asked about downtown routes, which garages were forgiving, whether parallel parking sensors were cheating. I gave the version I wish someone had given me, where to practice on a Sunday morning, how to watch for delivery trucks that appear out of nowhere on Illinois Street. June listened, taking notes on her phone. That's the choreography of a functional triangle. The teen leads with pride, the operations person logs the plan. The extra adult offers calm without staking territory. If you're in my seat, you learn fast that belonging isn't claimed. It's earned in small, repeatable acts that don't upstage the person who needs the win. Dad apologized again, this time with specifics, what he'd hidden, what he'd promised without permission, what was changing. Fixers think apologies are deliverables. Done right, they're also schedules. We agreed he'd handle Thursday drives, June would manage the practice log, and I'd be available for city driving runs when they wanted a second set of eyes. Evan texted mid-meet. Ground rules stand. Tell us good luck. That's sibling for I'm in, but don't make me hold hands. Mom replied to the shared note with a single line. Dinner next Sunday is on. If S wants to stop by for dessert, she's welcome. She didn't make it a test. She made it an open door with a time frame. Before they left, S looked at me, then at Dad. DMV test is in 3 weeks, she said. If it's not weird, will you come? Invitations define families more than blood does. You could argue about labels, or you can show up on a weekday morning with a coffee and a quiet cheer when someone parallel parks without touching the curb. I'll be there, I said. We walked back to the lot. Dad handed her the keys, and for the first time since this started, he stepped to the passenger side without glancing at a cover story. They pulled out clean, checked the mirrors, and merged into traffic like people who finally had the same map. 3 weeks later we met at the BMV on North Meridian like it was a small stage. Teenagers turn tests into identity checks. Adults turn them into audits of whatever they built. Fathers are at their best when they show up quietly, hands in their pockets, ready to clap once. S came out with a plastic card and a grin that didn't ask permission. June cried in the efficient way working mothers do. 1 Kleenex, then back to logistics. Dad handed S the keys without glancing at his calendar, because the calendar already told the truth. If you've ever tried to repair trust, you know that's what success looks like. The obvious, done out loud. We celebrated at Long's with warm donuts and paper hats. No codes, no department debrief texts. Dad sent Mom a picture of the card. She replied with a thumbs up and, "See you Sunday." Name stayed honest. S called him Dad, because that's the word that fit the hours he'd logged. June said, "Thank you, John," because she understood the cost of steadiness now lives in the open. I said, "Congrats, S," and meant it without trying to claim territory. In a healthy triangle, each person holds a corner and resists the urge to be the whole shape. You might be tempted to define everything. Better to define enough and let the routine make the case. Sunday dessert felt different because nothing was sneaking. Mom set out plates, and asked S about school. Evan fixed a wobbly chair and pretended it was a major repair. The windbreaker hung where it always hung, only now it wasn't hiding a second life. It was hanging in a house that knew its weight. They only survived by absorbing new data without overthrowing the old story. You can keep Christmas ornaments from 20 years ago and still add a new one without declaring a revolution. The algorithm had started this. One blue banner, a face, for mutuals. Algorithms don't gossip, they expose wiring. People decide what to do after the lights come on. Grown children, like me, create order with schedules and short, clear nouns. Mothers request receipts because continuity depends on them. Fathers have to choose between the comfort of being needed and the discipline of being known. When those choices go wrong, you don't burn the structure. You redraw it together with thicker lines and fewer euphemisms. I didn't forgive everything in a day. That's not how adults work. But I did choose the calendar over the guesswork, the invitation over the rumor, the seat at the table over the story in my head. As Parallel parked outside our block and came in for pie, proud of a small win that belonged to her. Dad sat between worlds without pretending they were one. That's the lesson I took without turning it into a sermon. Identity can hold more than one truth if you stop making secrecy do the holding. We cleared plates. Traffic moved around Monument Circle like always. And for the first time since the friend's suggestion, I felt like we were all driving on the same map.